So what is the best advice that I can give somebody? Again, I think that the single best advice that I can give somebody is to dream big and act small. I said, don't limit your career by thinking too small. You have to, now, once you can dream big and once you have identified for yourself what it is that you can do or want to do, now look at where the gaps are. Where am I today? What is it that I need to be able to do in the future in order to be in a position of success? And let's say, some people dreams to be a CEO of a company. Well, you're a recent graduate. What's the difference between you and a CEO? And you can write that down on a timeline of, experiences, certifications, different types. You have to pursue those relentlessly, right? You have to set up a goal. And that's why I use an individual development plan, is that write down your journey. Don't let it happen by chance, but let it happen by design.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thanks for joining me for the podcast where personal stories can have a global impact. This podcast has now reached 72 countries, and one of those is the Netherlands, where our guest today, Walter Dusseldorp, was born. Walter, welcome to the show.
Melvin, thank you for having me today. I look forward to a great conversation, having a little fun, and hopefully somebody will pick something up that they can learn from.
That sounds great. So how did I do pronouncing your last name?
You did pretty good. I always say you can go with W, Walter, or Dusseldorp, whatever works for you.
Okay, I prefer to say people's whole name and make sure I get it right. So Dusseldorp is how you say it.
That sounds great to me.
Okay. So other than your immediate family, did you know any other Dusseldorps in Zeddam or in Roncalli School?
Now you're going back all the way. So interesting enough, I come from a relatively small family. After the names were given back in the days of Napoleon, which is now known as Dusseldorp, my last name was generated there as Dussel being a small river, Dorp meaning village. My family ended up being as the border was switched back and forth many a times, we ended up right on the border between Holland and Germany. And so that's where my family originates from. My father and mother settled in Zeddam, so there are no other Dusseldorps there. And actually today only my sister lives there, but of course she doesn't carry the name Dusseldorp. Interesting enough, when I came to the United States, and we can talk about that, what happened in between that, I am the only Dusseldorp in the United States. So there's only one of me, plus my two sons who carry my last name forward. There have been some cousins over the years who have come and gone from Canada and from Australia who lived some time here. But it's not difficult to find me, which is a good thing and maybe a bad thing.
So if we see your last name somewhere, we'll know it was you. You're the guilty party, or your sons.
You can certainly, that is for sure. Or if you happen to see my last name spelled the same way, there's almost a 99.9% surety that it is related to me.
So you are the founder and CEO of Dusseldorp and Associates, and you use the name The Dutch Mentor. So does going Dutch in mentoring mean you split the cost of advice?
Yeah, that's a pretty funny approach. I think my clients would love that, but that is not the way it works. So first and foremost is that I do believe in pay it forward. I do a lot of time online on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Instagram. A lot of outreach, a lot of is done at no cost at all. So I truly believe that sharing your experiences with others, both in speaking engagement, one-to-one coaching, mentoring, and even writing books is a good way and really is part of my mission in life. I was fortunate to have great experiences. I was able to put those words in writing. I've, I think 9 or 10 books published on Amazon, and in those things at very, very low cost, but each one of them is actionable and valuable in its own right for the target audience.
All right. So what's the difference between mentoring and coaching?
So that's a great question, right? So coaching is somebody who is going to help you look at the bigger picture. Somebody who helps with strategy might not be somebody who's really closely associated with the role of technical abilities that you have, while a mentor is somebody who often works from deep experience, who can help you with the technical skills required and needed in order to be able to fulfill a role. My goal as the Dutch mentor is to work with emerging leaders. Now, the program that I have developed called Pure Leadership Power is agnostic to trade. It doesn't make a difference where you are. Most of the time, high-performing doers are promoted to become supervisors and managers and directors and all the way work their way into the C-suite. Too often, like 90% or more, they don't have proper leadership development training along the way. And what happens is they end up continuing to do in the role of leader rather than learning to lead. And that allows people to fall short, right? They never become the leaders they envision to be. They never are, they can be as effective. Their teams are not as high performing, often leads to frustration. And what I call that is they get stuck in the valley of despair. So that's why I spend most of my time. And that's the key differential between a coach, great people, we all need them, but it is a mentor that will really help the emerging leader to transition from doing to leading.
All right. So can you tell me more about the DutchMentor.com?
Sure. The DutchMentor.com, and I encourage all of you to stop by and check out the website. There's lots of free things there. You can go to my YouTube channel, hundreds of hours of free access to information. So that is first and foremost, from articles to short, to short stories. There's a way for me to reach out to emerging leaders to encourage them to take the bull by the horn, so to speak. Don't wait for your company to come to you and offer you a way to learn to become a more effective leader. Make a small investment in yourself and commit for a 6, 12, 18-month long program to really learn how to lead effectively. And the return on investment is very obvious. So again, the website is really for two reasons, right? A, it is about establishing a personal brand and a place where people can go and learn about things. But for me, it's very much about a way to give back and pay it forward, right? I have a reading list recommended of authors that I admire and books that have deep personal impact on myself. There's lots of testimonials of mentees along the way. So it is something that you can learn, in every one of my social media pages. It is more about continuous self-development.
All right. I'm definitely going to recommend this to my son. He's a young engineering manager, so just about a year into his role and learning. And so I will recommend this to him. It sounds like he could get a lot of service out of this.
Yes, perfect for him too. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it.
All right.
And I try to add value every day. If you join me on LinkedIn, and every day I post articles or I post, information in small bite-sized pieces, always actionable, right? And that's the key differential between what you can read lots of things, but one ear in, one ear out. You can go to a conference or a webinar, great places to meet people, but by Monday morning the following week, you have forgotten everything that was said. It is critically important to take action. So all my targeted education, conversations, talks, presentations is always about actually doing something with the information and then measuring your performance based on that action so you can actually change into new normals. And that is the key to success.
All right. You currently lead over 2,000 team members across 5 states, and you're the creator of the Pure Leadership Power methodology. Can you explain what Pure Leadership Power is?
Sure, of course. So I'm no longer leading the large contingent of folks. I did that for a 5-year period. It brought me in to help transform their organization from a lowest performing of 6 regions. In a couple of years, we headed to the highest performing, which gave me a lot of pride in the team itself. Right? It's never about the leader; it's really about the people. The leader has to set their people up for success and make them believe in themselves. So I carried that over, and the Pure Leadership Power program I started in 2012 with my mentor, and then have continuously expanded upon that until we get it right. What it means is really a 1, 2, 3 approach. 1, it is always starting to raise and become more self-aware. It's actually very scary. Very few people are truly self-aware. How do I know that? Well, just ask a simple question. Tell me about your why. And they will tell you what their how and what is, but they don't really know why they do what they do. And where their true purpose and passion is. We talk about personal brand and individual development and really getting a deep understanding how they are perceived by their peers, by their subordinates, and then help identify gaps of opportunities for improvement on themselves. So it's really reestablishing themselves as a person, as a leader. Second part is about learning to solve problems with root causes. Way too often we see a problem, We assume we know the answer and the problem, and we put a fix into place, which is nothing better than a Band-Aid. In other words, we put something on it, hoping that the Band-Aid will stay on it for a period of time. But too often we have to come back and fight the same fire again and again and again, which is very frustrating and very costly to any company. And then part 3 is about how can we put a team together and refocus them around the things that matter, and then be able to measure that for a sustained period of time through action and countermeasures and accountability in order to be able to become a high-performance team. Now, interesting enough, the Pure Leadership Power 1, 2, 3 is less about technical ability and far more about your behavior. It is behavior that holds us back every single day of the week.
All right. So how much of your leadership style was developed by your 32 years of service as a paramedic in New York?
Well, that's a good question, right? So I've been a paramedic for a long time. I've been a pilot for a long time, since early 2000, and most recently became a certified flight instructor instrument for a helicopter as well, and working on my fixed wing CFII. All of these things have one thread in common, right? I pushed myself to continue to learn and never stop learning. And that's really the most important thing. The message is this, right? A study was done in 2021, large study, nationwide study. 95% of executive leaders fully understood that the development of people is one of the most important things and wants and needs of an employee. The problem is only 5% of those actually take meaningful action to touch the hearts of those that they lead. And what happens is that most organizations, let's say a 10,000 person organization, they will send 40 people to a fellowship program. They give them all the attention and mentorship programs. They will give them a high-level education and a support system, sometimes even 6, 12, 18 months. The problem is that 90% of the front line reports to about 3,000, right? It's a 6-to-1 ratio. There's team leaders, supervisors, managers, and they are not getting the attention. So it is critically important that we understand very early on that we have to invest in ourselves, because we cannot expect or wait for your employer to do it. And that's really what helps you in the long run. But I recognize that for myself. I took the ball by the horn. I got a mentor. I was very creative in finding the funds to be able to provide that to my team members in a public health scenario. And it is the combination of being an independent operator like a paramedic, being somebody who needs to critically solve problems in a moment's notice in emergency services or as a pilot. That really helped me to develop this program, and keep that in mind as we develop people to becoming fully committed and self-direct.
All right. That's good information. So when you were a flight paramedic, did you fly the helicopter or did you treat patients?
No, during that period of time, it's 2005 to 2010, I worked for a company called Air Methods, Rocky Mountain Helicopter originally, then Air Methods. I worked as a flight paramedic. So the cool thing is, of course, 50% of the time you get to sit up front on the way to the scene or from the hospital back to base. So you get to do the aviation, navigation, communication. You don't get to hold the stick and rudder, so to speak. But it is maybe on rare occasion you will get to it. But you really get to be in that mindset. I already had my pilot's license prior to joining that service. But, once I had flown a helicopter, it's so much cooler than flying an airplane. Both of a function, right? You fly helicopter local, you fly airplane for distance. But that stuck with me. And so during those years, I worked as a care provider on the highest levels, right? And we were responsible for taking, premature birth babies at 23, 24 weeks, all the way through geriatrics and anything that is trauma related in between. So yeah, it was a very intense, but great job.
All right. So what is the magical key to success?
Well, the first thing is to start understanding your driver in life. It is that too many people, right? 62% of people are not happy doing what they're doing today. That's scary, right? You spend 40 years, nearly 40 years from 20 to 60 in the workforce. Could you imagine living a life like that and not loving what you do? So I think the key to success is to really relentlessly pursue what makes you truly happy, because you only have one life to live. And interesting, right? I've been a paramedic, I've been a flight paramedic, I've been a healthcare executive, and now I'm pursuing, a time as a coach, mentor, and as a flight instructor. Well, you say you're all over the place. No, as I get older, we change, and we have to adjust those things that makes us happy, right? It is, people say, well, money makes you happy. No, money makes things a little bit easier. but money doesn't make you happy, right? My mission early on, and that's really my why, is that, as a 14-year-old, I was riding my bicycle in Holland, and I saw a poor farmer across the street get hit by a car. I was first on scene. He was dying in my arms, and I felt completely helpless. Right at that moment, I knew for the rest of my life, all I wanted to do is help people. And I never wanted to be in a position, again, that I did not know what to do. So I left that scene, I cleaned myself up, and I got my first aid certificate. I started chasing ambulances, so to speak, and I came to my initial dream was to become a doctor. That kind of fell apart because my behavior wasn't right as a teenager. Came to America, and I became an EMT and a paramedic, and my story is written from that point forward. But even today, yes, I'm no longer on the streets saving lives, but now I'm taking care of people who take care of people. For me, it is critically important if I take a nurse manager and I make them the best nurse manager possible, who's somebody who's deeply committed to the mission, to the work that they do, they will treat their nurses better, who treat patients. So indirectly, I'm still a care provider. So it's the mission that I was able to drive through everything I do, and it is something that is valuable. That is the critical part to success. Never give up on your dream. Dream big, act small. The key thing is to act, right? I'll tell you quick stories. The other day I was sitting in an Uber, and I always make conversation with the Uber drivers, right? Where you're from, what you're doing. I had this young guy, 26 years old, from Russia. And he came over here 2 years ago and lived in Brooklyn. Now he was down in the South. And I said to him, what are you doing? What's your plan? And he was very broken English. And he said to me, he says, well, I was talking to people that said the American dream is dead. I said, hold on a second. I said, the American dream is only dead if you want it to be dead. You are in charge of your life. I said, do you want to make a difference? He said, I want to make a difference. I want to make it in America. I want to have all the things that I desire. I love working in IT. So, well, the first thing you need to do is, who are your friends? I said, well, they're all Russians. I said, what language do you speak at home? Well, we speak Russian. I said, well, the first commitment you need to make is you never speak another word in Russian until you speak perfect English. I said, if you want to make it in America, you need to speak English, and you need to make that commitment until you perfect it. And once you have it perfected, you can speak all the other languages on the side. And you tell all your friends the same thing. Do yourself a favor. Well, what happened with your Dutch? I said, well, listen, nobody wants to talk Dutch to me, right? And there's only a few Dutch people around. So I had no choice but to speak English. Badly broken, initially, but over time you get better and better. Once you get a mastery of the language, it will open up other opportunities and doors that are closed to you today. I said, so make a promise to yourself. Every person that gets into your car, you speak English to, and you lead the conversation. And so we agree, after, 20-minute ride, he felt uplifted. He felt that he had a new opportunity, a new future ahead of himself. Now, I probably will never see him again, but I would love to see if he actually followed through and said, listen, from today, this point forward, I'll speak only English until I'm really good at it so I can create opportunities for myself. And that is the key to success, right? Is don't wait for others to come and do it for you. You have to take the bull by the horn. You have to create that big dream, and you have to act small every single day and never give up.
All right, we just passed graduation season, mostly for college students. Some high schools across the country are still in session. But what would you tell a new graduate and how they can establish their career and then accelerate their career?
Yeah, so very interesting question. I've done a few commencement speeches over the years, and you always have to scratch your head. So what is the best advice that I can give somebody? Again, I think that the single best advice that I can give somebody is to dream big and act small. I said, don't limit your career by thinking too small. You have to, now, once you can dream big and once you have identified for yourself what it is that you can do or want to do, now look at where the gaps are. Where am I today? What is it that I need to be able to do in the future in order to be in a position of success? And let's say, some people dreams to be a CEO of a company. Well, you're a recent graduate. What's the difference between you and a CEO? And you can write that down on a timeline of, experiences, certifications, different types. You have to pursue those relentlessly, right? You have to set up a goal. And that's why I use an individual development plan. Is that write down your journey. Don't let it happen by chance, but let it happen by design. So that is the first thing you need to do. Now, the second thing is that I say is that don't sit and wait in your bedroom and play video games while you could be out doing something. Even if you don't have the job of your dreams yet, you can go out and help a neighbor, right? Build good work ethic. It is about your network of people where success comes from. And that is something that is critically important, right? So it is the people, places, and things that you are in control over, that you have full influence over, that will lead to success itself. So talk to everybody. You will never know who you're speaking to on the train, the automobile, the airplane, or in between, right? You might just come across somebody who's a phenomenal connection, somebody who can recommend you for. When you are in a job, always make sure that you use the 70-20-10 approach. Make sure that you continuously learn on the job that you're in, and learn new things, techniques, and behaviors that lead you to your big dream. Second, always have a mentor, internal or external, free, or maybe you have to pay for it. And then the last 10% of your time needs to be on continuous education. If you have your bachelor's, you need to get your master's. If you have your master's, maybe you need to get your doctorate. Maybe you need to get a certification. But don't stop learning.
Sorry about that. Is that the advice you give people when they ask how they can become a better version of themselves?
Yes, to first dig really deep into themselves, right? And be vulnerable, right? It is quite okay to not be perfect. Anybody you speak to said my road to the top was a straight line. Either they were full of baloney or they never had the true life experiences. Listen, I struggled as a teenager. I had an identity crisis. I drank too much. I went to an outpatient rehab center to work there, but at the same time also to get sober when I was 18, 19 years old. I needed to deeply learn about myself. I had this big dream of becoming a doctor, but there was just no way I was going to do that by drinking every day or thinking in a toxic manner. So it is really important that you have these moments of reflection and that you are vulnerable. It is through that period of time that you raise self-awareness, that you can live a more honest life. And listen, by no stretch in imagination am I perfect, right? I make mistakes all of the time, but I try to learn from every mistake that I've made. So again, the word to the youngsters is that go out and try, right? Fail fast, fail forward. Sitting at home waiting for it to come to you is not good for you. It's not. Limited growth comes from that. It is truly action-based. You have to take action. And the key to success is to measure your action on a daily basis to make sure that you actually are getting closer and closer to a new normal. And I use a simple example, right? If you want to learn a new skill, like let's say I want to learn how to become ambidextrous. Well, when I write with my dominant hand, it feels natural and normal. I don't need to think about it. But now I want to learn with my opposite hand, and it feels strange and awkward. Now I can do this 2 or 3 days, which most of us will do, and then give up. Well, if you do it every day for 15 minutes for the next 120 days, I almost guarantee you that you will be ambidextrous. Right? But you need to take the action necessary in short spurts, right? 15 minutes a day. There's nothing that you cannot learn. It is only our behavior that will hold us back from attaining that skill.
All right. What is upper brain thinking?
So we have, people refer to it, we have a left-sided brain and right-sided brain, right? We have an upper, but the upper brain is really more process thinking. So think about it that if something happens and you get scared, we always go back to the fight or flight types and, reaction in our bodies. And that gives us a little adrenaline dump. And that's how we run. That's how we fight. That's how we become very defensive. That's how we react. So what we try not to do is to react to things. So there's a simple equation, E for events, R for reacting or responding, and equals O for outcomes. So for every event that takes place in your life, there's going to be an outcome. Now, if you react, lower brain, the outcome is often limited. We promote is for you to use your upper brain, so process your thoughts before responding quickly, that the outcomes are more predictable. Now, this can happen very quick. So as a paramedic, if somebody drops in front of me into cardiac arrest, I have been trained to do ABC, airway, breathing, circulation. But at the same token, I still need to put a little bit of responding thought process in it. Is the scene safe? But if I just react to it blindly, I can actually hurt myself. So that's not good. So things can happen in a nanosecond, but it still requires a response, not just a reaction. If somebody comes, if you are going into your boss and you need to have, the boss says to you, so we need to have a difficult conversation today. And you're kind of surprised by that. Your brain automatically goes into lower brain. The little hairs in the back of your head stand up. Well, right then and there, the best action we can take at that point in time is to take a timeout. So if you do that to your employee and they become defensive, to say, timeout, let's go for a walk, let's go have a cup of coffee, let's go back an hour from now. We should not do that to other people as leaders. And if you are the victim of that, then you need to call for a timeout and say, let me clear my head, let me walk away, let me reset my brain so we can have a conversation that's more meaningful. And that is critical. That's very, very, very important.
So we just talked about new graduates or recent graduates. How can they prepare for a job interview? Well,
again, I would say get help. Don't do this on your own. Right? I'm actually working right now with 2 or 3 people who are in the boat. So I have a simple package that I provide to people. Again, preparing people for an interview is critically important on 2 levels. One, most likely you're an entry-level job, and there's going to be 400 other applicants for that same job. The last thing you want to do is sound like the other 399. Right? And people say, well, what do you mean by that? So, well, if I ask you why you want this job, you're going to tell me, well, because I'm a good listener, I'm a hard worker, I did well in college, I have this, I have that. Well, all the other people are going to say the exact same thing. So you're not memorable. So the first thing you need to do is to learn how to become memorable. How can you make it in a way that people who are interviewing can feel you, can sense you? And just think about that. Go to American Idol with Simon Cowell there. What is one of the comments he makes all of the time to singers? Is I can hear you, I can see you sing, but I don't feel it. Right? So therefore you're not memorable. Or you picked a song that everybody else sings. Well, your interview is no different. If you want to be that standout, then you need to be a standout. You need to learn to differentiate yourself from everybody else. And it's very rare that people can do that on their own. Seek a coach or a mentor, pay for the service if necessary to prepare yourself for an interview. If it is that important, you're willing to make that small investment because the return on investment can be enormous.
Okay, so we've gotten the job. We've had years into the experience, become a manager or some type of leader on a team. How do you build trust and engagement with your team?
So there's actually a little equation, right? Because we love little math equations. So high performance is actually the function of trust and engagement. Trust is the only non-variable there. So if there is no trust, it's very difficult to be engaged, and it's almost next to impossible to have a high performance team. So again, there are 4 key responsibilities of a leader that helps you build trust. One is you truly have to love the people that you lead. And I'm talking about philia kind of love, right? Brotherly, sisterly kind of love. You have to make it a point to get to know the people that you lead on a much deeper level. That does not mean that you need to go to barbecues or bar mitzvahs with them, but you need to get to know them truly as people, as individuals. You need to understand what makes them tick. So studies have shown a long time ago that there's really, 4 things that people value: recognition, appreciation, rewards, and development before money. So it is important for you to understand what is it that each person, what makes them tick, and I call that an intrinsic value. That's one. And there's much more to that, of course. The second part of that is that you have to lead through context, not control. You have to get people to buy in, not control them. People don't, especially the new generation, does not like to be controlled. They don't even like to come to work at 8 o'clock in the morning. The third part is that it is your responsibility as the leader to create a safe environment, psychological and physical safety. Right? That is the base of our existence. And then 4, and this is very, very important, we have to work with great focus. We love to give people 10 to 15 things to do. Well, they cannot be successful. But if you, as the leader, help identify what is that 1 or 2 things that if you do that well first, will have the greatest impact on everything else, you can see people accelerate because they can wrap their heads around. So that is what builds trust. Now, giving critical feedback, and bi-directional feedback, being vulnerable as a leader to your employee, building meaningful partnerships, all key components to building trust and engagement itself. And that is easy for me to say. It's much harder for people to do. So people can do these things once or twice, and then they get overwhelmed with other things, and they forget about how to love people, how to lead with context, or they go to lower brain thinking when things happen. And that is the thing that we have to recognize, like everything else. If you want to become that highly effective leader, you need to build these skills, but even more importantly, these behaviors over a period of time, so then they can actually become part of who you are.
Okay, how do you build sustainable outcomes?
Well, so I'll use a simple analogy that we can all relate to. December 31st, we all sit around the campfire, we have our fireworks go off, we celebrate going into the new year, we make all these wishes. Listen, I'm like everybody else. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to buy a membership. And what happens is in the first week, we go 3 times. The second week, we go 2 times. The third week, I go 1 time. And for the rest of the year, I might go back 3 or 4 more times. We are really good at doing things that are a very short period of time, but we don't sustain the things that we set out to do. 70-80% of the things we say we're going to do never work out to the extent possible, right? So we fall short on that. And that is behavior, right? It is our short attention span. There's constant need for change. Part of the reason, just like we talked about earlier, you fix something kind of sort of with a Band-Aid, and you have to come back and do it again. So how do we create sustainable change? Well, we have to learn a couple of basic rules. A, we have to have unification around what it is that we need to do. We need to have the right people. We need to be able to measure the results of whatever it is that we're trying to improve. And then we need to measure that and take actions and countermeasures as necessary over an extended period of time. So we know it's about a 90 to 120 day window to create a new normal. Norming, or that forming, storming, norming, performing a model that we'll talk about. Well, it takes about 120 days if you do things consistently well and you take appropriate countermeasures. Now, this can take much longer, and in some rare occasion, it takes a little bit shorter to do it, depending on the difficulty of the change itself. But that is the key to performance.
All right, I just have a couple questions left. And with this one,
Sure.
I want to sort of go back to something you mentioned earlier. I want to get a few more details about raising self-awareness and starting with your why. How does somebody determine what their why is?
Well, rarely do I see people really get into their why without a little bit of help. So I'm an admirer of Simon Sinek. So the first place I tell people to go is go online, go look at an 18-minute TED Talk by Simon Sinek titled Starting with Your Why. You can read his book titled the same as well. It helps you. And again, he will help you understand the what and how and not the why. Then the second part I would recommend is to people to need to be able to articulate their why in 43 seconds. And they look at me, what? Well, 43, I want you to come up with a hook, 8 seconds, with a body of about 30 seconds and a closer of another 5 seconds after that. And it is your ability to concisely tell a story that's uniquely yours, that grabs my attention. I seek more, and then I close it, is something that can differentiate you from everybody else. So what is your why? Go back to something that is emotional. No different than I just told you that, I got emotional because I have I came across that accident, right? It was an enlightening moment in my life that opened my eyes, that gave me, both physical, mental, and spiritual direction in life. And I'm still living that today, all based on that story. But whenever I tell that story, I saw, an old farm across the road got hit by a car, and people say, "Oh, tell me more. Did he live? Did he die? What happened for him?" Right? That's the hook. And then for me to share my story on how I became from that moment into an EMT and then a paramedic, and how I went into leadership and leading people on mission. All these things speak to my why, right? Helping others. But that's where the connection takes place. And don't give up on that too soon. So I tell people that I work with in my mentorship programs, it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get there. Right? It is most people don't know even where to start or tell me the what and how, but that's not the why. And on rare occasion, you will find out that people, are really not connected to the work that they're doing. And then maybe that is the instigator for them to start looking for, what is my why and how can I be more purposeful in life? Because again, I have one life to live. But that's to start there, seek information, work with people, write it down longhand, write up a whole book for that matter, and then boil it down to a 43-second story that is deeply meaningful to you and unique to you. And because of uniqueness, it often will include a brother or a sister or a mom or a dad or, an aunt and uncle, somebody that is related to you, to something that happens, that had an impact on you, because that's how we live, right? We live through experiences. Through those experiences, we take actions, and those actions give us results. Well, if you're not happy with your results, then go back and take new actions. Look at new experiences. I'd stop doing the same thing over and over and over and expect the same different outcome.
Makes perfect sense. So as we close out this conversation today, what final bit of advice would you like to leave with the listeners?
Again, this conversation is worth nothing unless you take an action. All right. So for yourself, if you go out and leave this conversation and you go out and listen to the TED Talk that is recommended, if you go to my website and start looking at some of the videos and take action on your individual development plan, your personal brand, really seeking the truth of your leadership style, write out what is your big dream, but then even more importantly, very clearly document what are the small action steps you need to take. Seek a mentor, internal, external. It is, instead of getting that cup of coffee for $7.99 at Starbucks, and that's probably the cheapest coffee that they offer these days, invest that into a coach or a mentor for a period of time to help you get set up for success in life. So the answer is take action. If you don't take action, everything we just said in this, love talking to you, but most of this will be forgotten by Monday morning. And we need to change that. And if you really want to have an impact, you need to take action that is meaningful, and that is sustainable, and that will create new normals.
That makes good sense. That's good advice. And hopefully everybody will heed the advice and will come check out your website. I'll post a link in the show notes, and they can read your books and see what all they can learn and take some action to change the trajectory of their life like you did. So our guest today has been the Dutch mentor.
They're always welcome to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they're always welcome to book a free strategy call with me on my website as well. Be happy to chat.
All right, that sounds good. So our guest today has been the Dutch mentor, Walter Dusseldorp. Walter, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Melvin, a great conversation, and I wish you much success with your podcast, and I look forward to speaking again in the future.
That sounds good, sir. Thank you. Have a good day. So please go to my website at podcastreallife.com for more information about my guest and the things that we discussed today, including a link to his website. That's it for today's episode of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next time for another chance to learn from each other. Until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go. And that is a